Hello and welcome to another episode of the Diet Obsessed podcast. I am your host, Veronica Santarelli. I am a certified personal trainer, nutrition and weight loss coach, and this podcast is for those of us who are just obsessed with everything related to improving health and longevity, with a special emphasis on food, fitness, and diet culture. All right, let's get into the show. But first, if you want to support the show, there's a couple ways you can do that. If you don't want to spend any money but still support the show, you can click that subscribe button on YouTube. That doesn't cost a thing, but it really helps us YouTubers. If you're just listening to the audio version, this is one of my free episodes, and I do 2 premium content episodes every month. You can subscribe to those through Patreon, Apple Podcasts, anywhere you listen to podcasts. Those extra 2 ones are extra juicy, extra personal, extra controversial stuff that's just not stuff I want to share in the public. So if you want to subscribe to those, that would be great. And then also, if you just leave a rating or review, that's a huge help to us podcasters. So, especially on iTunes. So those are some different ways that you can support the show, and I appreciate your support. All right, welcome back, everyone. Sick, as you can hear, my voice is not great today. I definitely caught something coming home from the East Coast from Thanksgiving. So I will be having coughing fits through this podcast. I will try to cut most of them out. So, hopefully this goes okay. I'm going to try to get through it today. So I just got back. Let's get right into my mental health check-in to start. So my mental health is great. Not my physical health, but my mental health is good. I just got back from Maine, where I'm from. We celebrated Thanksgiving and my mom's 70th birthday, and I got to spend a lot of quality time with my family, and I got to see just everyone I love, my brother, my sister, her husband Paul, my brother-in-law. My stepfather brought us all together and flew Chad and I in. So it was really, really fun, delicious, of course. I'll get into the food in a second. But it was a really quick trip, and flying to the East Coast from Arizona only for, a long weekend. It's a lot, If I could fly first class, that'd be a different story. But cramped into those coach seats, Chad was sick the entire time, and I think I got whatever he had. And I felt bad for him. He had a head cold the entire time. But overall, the weather was great. It was raining when we first got there. But we stayed at a really beautiful, it's called the Captain's Collection, and that's in Kennebunkport. So it's these old, almost colonial homes. And they're just very stately manors is how I describe them. Just really beautifully decorated, very old fashioned, the really high-end wallpaper, and just really great details. And the rooms were decorated beautifully. There was a little Christmas tree in all of our rooms, and a little electric stove that we could turn on, and it snowed a little bit while we were there, so Chad got the full Maine experience. And we got to walk around and, do all the things. So that was really good. I did recently, I think I talked about this on my VIP podcast, but I'll mention it here now. The gentleman that owns the studio that I do my personal training at is going to be closing his studio, and he's bringing all of his clients over to this other gym. It's a little bit further from me. It's like an extra 5 minutes. It's not that bad. And they have really great equipment. They have it used to be a 24-hour fitness, but they have all this really nice equipment in there. And so there's just more space. But literally, so I'm a little bit like disappointed with myself, but also like I understand why I did this. So Jose, who's the owner, he like asked me to come with him. He's like, "Hey, I still want you to train with me." He said, "I'm going to pay the rent for you so that you can continue training the clients that I gave to you." And I was like, "Well," he's like, "as long as you're doing like 12 sessions a week," he's like, "that'll work out for me." And I was like, "Well, I'm not really doing that many sessions right now. Right now I'm probably doing closer to like 7 a week." And so I was like, "I don't want you to lose money, but what he asked me to do was take on this additional client. It was a 5 a.m. client. And I was like, I didn't want to, right? I really, really, he asked me before and I said no, and he was able to give it to this other guy trainer. And then but he can't afford to bring this other trainer there. He's like, and he knows I'm not going to steal his clients. He's like, a lot of trainers, they just think they should be getting the full compensation and they'll try to steal my clients. He's like, "I trust you and I don't think that you'll do that." He said, "So I'd like you to, I'd like you to stay." And he's like, "Maybe your schedule will open up." And I said, "Jose, I'm like, I need to be brutally honest with you." I said, "I will give you about 6 more months." I said, "But I'm not going to keep, I'm like, eventually, once I get promoted at my other job, I probably will cut this personal training out for the most part." So I said, "I just want to be very upfront and honest with you." I said, but he asked me again to take on this 5 a.m. client. She needs to come in twice a week and she can't do Saturdays. And I was like, "Okay, I'll make it work." So I agreed to do this, even though I do not want to do this. So now I'm coming in at 5 a.m. on Mondays and 5 a.m. on Fridays, whereas before I didn't have any training clients on Fridays. And I had all this extra time. And now I'm like, so this is the first week that I'm back, and I'm like, okay, now I have to get up at 3 a.m. 2 more days, which is tough because my other job I work till 10 p.m. So, some days like I'm just getting like maybe 3-4 hours of sleep when I have to get up at 3 a.m. for this client. So, and then of course this week I get sick. So I'm like, "Oh my God, how am I going to get through this week?" I was like, "Should I cancel with some of these clients?" I hate canceling on people. And Monday was the first day that I trained this brand new client at this brand new gym. And change is something that we all have to go through, right? Change is inevitable. Change is uncomfortable. But a lot of times change is good. Change can be positive. And I was mentally like, okay, I got to go in. I got to get used to this new gym, comfortable with all this new equipment, comfortable with this brand new client, getting up at 5 a.m. for this new 5 a.m. client on Mondays. And so I was like mentally like, okay, just let's get through this day. Let's get through this week. It'll be okay. We'll figure it all out. So anyway, I get to this new gym. And Jose had texted me the code. There was this code to get in. I didn't really know what to expect when I got there, but I was thinking that the gym would be open and bumping and that, even though it was like 4:45 in the morning, I figured that I wouldn't be the first one there. Well, lo and behold, I was the first one there. And so, there were definitely like, my client was already in the parking lot. She was there waiting, but she was still in her car. So I'm getting out. It's dark. I have my flashlight on, and as I walk up to the door, I see this box just hanging open, empty. And I'm like, is this supposed to be the box where a key is for this code? Because I know in like real estate, they'll have those lock boxes where there's a key inside and you have the code and you can get the key. This was what this was. And so I'm there and I'm like, I'm like, there's nothing in this box. I like close it And then I'm like, okay, so there is a code that you can punch in. And I'm like, well, there's nothing in this box. So I'm like, okay, this isn't going to get me in. I'm like pulling at the door, it's locked. And then there's this other lock box a little further down. So I'm like, oh, let me try this one. It's not working. I mean, I look like I'm a robber trying to break into the place because I'm just like sitting there with my flashlight trying to get in. And then my client comes up, who, again, I've never trained her before. I'm like, hey, are you so-and-so? And I had met her briefly in the other studio. So I knew who she was. And she's very sweet. I love this girl. She's really, really, she's going to be a great client. And she's like, hey, she's like, can I help you? Like, and I said, well, I don't know. This code isn't working. I said, this box was open. I said, I think there's supposed to be a key in there. And so finally it's like 10 minutes pass and Jose comes up and I texted him. I'm like, Jose, I'm like, what's up with this lock situation? I'm like, there's no key in here. And he's like, I'm almost there. So he shows up, his 5 a.m. client shows up. So we're all sitting there. It's like 5 of 5. We're supposed to be training our clients at 5. And then this other trainer shows up, this really beautiful girl who I think she's supposed to be training like 3 girls together. I don't know if she had a class or, a triple session or what, but she had been there for a while. I think she might be like, I don't know, either she's a long-standing person there or maybe assistant manager or something, I don't know, but she was like, no, this is supposed to have a key in it. And we look in and she's like, oh my God, the key is sitting right there on that table. Like we could see the key locked inside sitting on that table. So she's basically like, sorry, I guess we can't train today. So she just sends all of her clients home. And Jose's like trying to call the owner and trying to figure it out. He sends his client home. And I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? Excuse my French. I'm like, I got my ass up for this 5 a.m. client. I'm not feeling well. I could tell I was getting sick. I wasn't like fully blown sick. I was hoping it would pass, but anyway. So, and I had a break. Like I had a 7 a.m. client and I had a 5 a.m. client. And I'm like, so I'm just going to like not get paid for this 2 hours when I just woke up at 3 a.m. And I'm like playing it cool on the outside, but in my head, I'm like pissed. I'm like, this is bullshit. I'm like, this is so unprofessional. Why is nobody here? Why is the owner not answering? And I'm, in my head, I'm throwing a mini tantrum. I'm like, this is not what I signed up for. This is ridiculous. And I'm like kind of getting mad at Jose, but it's not his fault. He's also embarrassed. He doesn't want this to be happening. It's his first day too. And so I said to my client, I said, do you just want to train outside? I said, because, there was this big open pathway. There was like, I'm like, I can train you right here. And she's like, I'm game. So it was freezing out. It was dark. It's 5 a.m. in the morning. I'm like, okay, let's do. So I just built a session, an outdoor session for her right there. And we did a little bit of a Tabata thing. We did some sprints. We did some walking lunges. I just put it together all at once. And she got a really good workout. I kicked her butt. And she was grateful that we made it happen because she also didn't want to, be there for no reason, no purpose, not get her workout in. She's like, thank you so much for staying. I'm like, no problem. Like, I just want to get paid for this hour. So then I have an hour between, which was really good because some of the equipment in there is like, oh my God, it's going to take me a minute to figure some of this equipment out and get comfortable. So I spent the next hour just, figuring out some equipment and then train my 7 a.m. client. So anyway, so tomorrow I am going to show up again. I think Jose has like the backdoor code, so I think it'll be okay moving forward, but that was not good for my mental health. I was so pissed. And also, it probably wasn't good for me being sick that I was like out there in the cold training, but whatever, we got through it. And then Wednesday, I was supposed to have clients. I was again supposed to have a 5 a.m. client, and I was just getting progressively sicker each day. And I was, it was like 11 a.m. or 11 p.m. on Tuesday night. I could not fall asleep. And I finally texted all my clients. I had 3 clients scheduled, 5, 6, and 7. And I I said, I'm so sorry to text you guys so late. I'm like, I can't. I'm really sick. I'm like, I don't want to get you sick tomorrow. So I canceled all that. Wanted to move to Friday. So tomorrow is going to be another day. I think I'll be well enough to get up and train. I don't think I'll be contagious anymore. So anyway, that is and was my mental health check-in of the week. I hope all of you have had a great mental health week yourselves. All right, let's get into a longevity lifestyle. So my mom's birthday, my sister ended up suggesting a gift. We ended up getting her and my stepfather this really kind of fancy getaway for a weekend. We got her like a gift certificate to a beautiful resort in Maine. My sister has all these, she's a concierge in Maine. She sets up all these amazing experiences. So she gets to visit the most beautiful places all around Maine and eat the most delicious food and drink the best wine. And so she has all these great suggestions, and she really is able to get some incredible hookups. So anyway, so we all went in on that gift. And as I was, thinking about additional gifts, I was shopping the other day and I was like, oh, let me just pick up this eye cream for her. There was this, it was at Costco and they had this Perricone MD eye cream. And, my mom's turning 70 and I've been religious about my eye cream since I was like 12. And I don't know, I like using eye cream. I just like having that specific, more concentrated, cream to put around my eyes in the morning and at night, just to depuff and help prevent wrinkles. And I don't know, it's such a habit that's ingrained in me now. And I just assumed that my mom uses eye cream too. So I picked some up and I brought it to her and I gave it to her and I said, do you already use eye cream? And she's like, no. And I said, really? I'm like, oh, I'm surprised you don't use eye cream. And she's like, well, how do you use it? And I'm like, well, you just put it on your eye. But my question for you is it rude to give eye cream, anti-aging products as gifts, right? She's turning 70. An eye cream I thought might be a nice gift, but I remember in the past I'd bought something that was also kind of anti-aging for my mom, and Vanessa, my sister, was like, that's rude. That's rude to give to her. And I said, well, I would like it. I said, I would love this as a gift. But as I thought about it more, I'm like, well, people that aren't trying to stay more youthful looking, aren't trying to, because there's some people that do everything they can to, fight the signs of aging. And there's some people that just accept the changes. And I'm going to be getting really into this in my podcast review in a few minutes. But what do you think? Have you ever given the anti-aging gift to somebody and was it well received? Was it not well received? One of my listeners just sent me this really good podcast. I'm still listening to it. It was like a 2.5-hour podcast. And it was this woman that's married to this board certified dermatologist. And she was talking about things that work and things that don't. She was saying that the red light therapy masks are kind of bullshit. Although she did say there's some science around wound healing. I've seen results, and I think I'm looking at my mom. Like, my mom has been religious about her mask too. I see results in my mom. I think that people that aren't doing a ton of stuff to their face, especially if they use something new that is meant to boost collagen, I don't know, I think you can see some results. And I think everybody's different. I think some people see more results than others. But anyway, she thought it was kind of a waste of time. She's like, hey, if it gets you into your regimen and, more power to you. But there are people that don't fight the signs of aging. I was just on Instagram and looking at this Instagram post with Linda Hamilton. And she's like, I've never done anything to try to look younger. She said, what was the quote exactly? It was, let me read it to you. I thought it was interesting because especially people that are on camera, that are in the public eye, it's definitely something that some people just, they accept the changes that are coming and think that I can't find it, but she said she likes to know that that her life has earned all of these changes that have come. And I think that's a beautiful sentiment to think like that, right? And it is true. I mean, how you've lived your life does show on your face, whether you've had a lot of stress or gone through illness or, had trauma happen to you, or have had a very, stress-free life, and you have access to a lot of, like the woman that was on this podcast, she's married to a dermatologist. So she does all the peels and does so many different things that somebody like me, I can't afford all that stuff, right? So for me, something like, some eye creams, using the collagen, drinking it in my coffee every day, I've seen visible changes. And I do think that some of these modalities really are effective, right? And she kept raving and raving about Retin-A. Again, I'm not going to use Retin-A. That's not for me. And so I think everybody needs to listen to the experts, but also follow your gut and do what you feel is right for you. Because we all, especially if you've been in tune with your body and you've been really focused internally, a lot of times we can tell when something is working or not working for us. So anyway, feel free to DM me. Have you ever given an anti-aging gift? What are your thoughts on that? Was that rude of me to give to my mom, or a good gift? I'm sure there's a lot of different opinions based on how you feel about this topic. But feel free to DM me if you have any strong thoughts on it at the Diet Obsessed podcast. And that was my longevity lifestyle segment of the week. All right, let's get into a foodie affair. So I was listening to The Toast this week, and Claudia had on Joey Camasta, and she brought up the topic of leftovers. Do you eat leftovers? Will you take leftovers from a restaurant? And Joey doesn't like leftovers. Claudia doesn't like leftovers. I'm a leftover queen. And I had a lot of stuff in my freezer that I had frozen from a while back. Now, things don't stay good indefinitely in the freezer. Things can get freezer burn. And so I was unpacking my freezer because I was a little bit lazy this week. I did not want to go grocery shopping. And I was, getting sick. So I'm like, what do I have in my freezer that's left over that I can use? So I pulled out, I had this chicken fried rice. I'd saved a portion of that. I took out these sausage rolls that I had saved. And then I took out this turkey stuff that I just immediately threw away. I could already see that was not going to be good and not appetizing looking. And the sausage rolls, it was homemade sausage rolls. It was homemade bread, delicious sausage, fennel, and they were amazing. I made some eggs, and it had, put a little butter, and it was perfect. It was like a really delicious meal. Sausage roll, little egg, healthy, got some nutrients from the egg. And now the chicken fried rice, I think when I made this, I made it 2 weeks in a row. And the second time I made it a huge supply of it. And again, I hate wasting food. So I ate it until I was so sick of it. So when I brought it out of the freezer, I'm like, I think I'm still sick of this stuff. It was months and months and months ago. And so I brought it to work, and I'm like, should I just throw this away? It's still sitting in the fridge. I think I'm just going to throw it away. I just can't do it. But what are your thoughts? Are you a leftover person? Are you not a leftover person? Some people throw things away, do not like to take things home from a restaurant. I personally do. Feel free to share your thoughts with me at the Diet Obsessed podcast on Instagram. And that is my foodie affair of the week. All right, let's get into my healthy habits of the week. Well, before I left for Thanksgiving, I had been working out a lot. I felt really good going into the holiday. I had been eating a lot of soup, Thai soup, harvest soup, walnuts. The last day right before I left, I just had some eggs and I didn't even have any bread with it. Now, when we got to our destination, that's a different story. I'm going to go into my indulgences in a minute. But my mom was going to take us to a dinner or lunch on the way back, on our flight back. And she had planned an Italian restaurant, but I had so much Italian food. It's the first time I ever was like sick of Italian and I wanted something different. So I found a Thai restaurant because Thai food is healthy for the most part. I mean, the herbs and spices, it's whole foods, and I just love Thai food. It's probably my favorite Asian cuisine. And I was debating on what to get. I was contemplating getting the pad Thai. It's always a little bit of a risk because I don't like sweet pad Thai. But I tried one of my stepfather's fresh rolls. Those were excellent. And then I got this thing called larb. And I ended up choosing the chicken instead of the pork just for a healthier, higher protein, lower fat option. And it came with some sticky rice. And it was really good. It was very lean. It was tasty. It had really delicious flavors and texture. The sticky rice was a little bit too sticky. It was like you couldn't break it apart at all. It was coming apart in globs. And so I ate as much as I could. It was very filling. Chicken is filling. I think if I had ordered the pork, I probably could have finished it because I think the higher fat content would have been more, easier to eat more of it. But it was really good. I didn't take the rest home just because I was going on a plane and I didn't want to, it just wasn't worth it. And then Chad had gotten like a fried chicken dish. So I tried some of his. It was good. My mom had ordered like a Thai basil dish that was really good. And so I was just glad that I had chosen that healthier choice as far as a restaurant out before I got on the plane. And then I got some snacks for the plane. I had some chocolates and stuff like that. So I'll get into that in my tasty treats. But we did a lot of walking in Kennebunkport just because we were really close to the little town, the center of town in Kennebunkport. So we walked all around. So we got some steps in, but I have not worked out all week. When I'm sick, I baby myself. I just want to get healthy again. So I've been eating healthy this week. I did just go get some more of that Thai soup. And then I picked up some ingredients to make some chicken lettuce wraps. So I'm going to try to make some chicken lettuce wraps this weekend. That way I have something yummy, but also something that's healthy and flavorful, well-balanced. And then I'm going to try to recreate that recipe for a little Christmas or a holiday party we're having at work. So I'll let you know how that recipe turns out. But those were my healthy habits of the week. I hope all of you have had some great healthy habits this week yourselves. All right, let's get into my tasty treats of the week. So this section is going to be way longer because it's Thanksgiving. It's indulging time. Now, typically, I have Thanksgiving is at home, right? It's either at my house or it's at Chad's house or, I've spent it with my brother before, but it's always a homemade meal. And I love the leftovers. I love making turkey and stuffing sandwiches later. But that didn't happen this year because we literally went out to dinner on Thanksgiving. So the weekend started. Now I had eaten really healthy leading up to the plane ride, but on the plane, I was eating Cheez-Its. I was eating not gummy bears, but gummies, like sour gummies. And then we landed and I hadn't eaten anything since the junk on the plane. So we walked into town, got a coffee. I got a blueberry coffee cake that I literally ate one piece of. I'm kind of mad at myself that I didn't finish it, but I think my mom finished it. So at least it didn't go to waste. And we got a ham and cheese croissant. Now they only had one left. So I split it with Chad. Chad didn't even eat his. I'm like, if I'm splitting with something with you, I want you to eat it, or I will eat the whole thing. And let's see. And then, so now the holiday season, there's always delicious cocktails, seasonal cocktails at bars. I love a seasonal cocktail. So I had a pumpkin espresso martini at a bar. So good. Now, granted, so we took the red eye. I did not sleep. I literally did not sleep a wink. It was like every time I started falling asleep, my head would fall and I'd like jerk myself up. I hate trying to sleep on a plane. And so we get there and we go right into the day. And we just didn't sleep that night. But I had a few really good restful nights leading up to this. So I was like, I'm going to be fine. I'm just going to power through. But we went to a couple bars to start. And I didn't have a lot in my stomach. I was like, whatever, I'm ready to drink. So I had an espresso martini and then a pumpkin espresso martini. And then at dinner, we had a lot of wine. Definitely drank too much that night. With no sleep and too much alcohol, not a good combination. But the pumpkin espresso martini was delicious, I have to say. So that night, my sister had gotten us a really good hookup at this beautiful Italian restaurant. And I ordered the chicken Milanese, if that's how you say it. It's like basically a fried chicken breast with arugula on top and some spices. It's so good. I love that dish. But the restaurant sent around a ton of additional dishes, just complimentary, because my sister, she sends them a lot of business. So they hook her up and hook all of us up, which is so nice. So they sent around a bunch of different pasta dishes. They sent around Brussels sprouts. We had all this like focaccia bread with this special honey. And oh my God, just the food, the wine. All had ordered this beautiful bottle of wine. And yeah, it was so delicious, so much fun. We went back to the house and my sister had gotten this huge German chocolate cake and we had vanilla ice cream with this German chocolate cake and it was amazing. It was so, so good. Then we come to Thanksgiving dinner. Now, I wouldn't call this a foodie fail, right? Because it wasn't inedible. But so first of all, let me just have a drink of water first. So first of all, we go to this insanely fancy restaurant. Okay, it's called Ocean. It's literally right on the ocean. The view, you can't beat the view. It's so beautiful. It's in Kennebunkport. You can see the Bush compound from, the Bushes, like former President Bush. They have this whole peninsula that they own. And it's this private kind of, not island, but it's like this jetway that kind of juts out into the ocean. And it's stunning, beautiful. So we were overlooking all that. And I had never eaten at this restaurant. I'd had a drink there before with my sister, but I'd never eaten there. So I was very excited. And it was, you could pick a 3 or 4 courses. And you could choose wine pairings. They had chosen all these beautiful wines and what specific wine would enhance that course. And so my stepfather was covering the meal. We were covering our alcohol if we had it. So I'm like, I'm going to get the wine pairing because I want the full experience. I'm so excited to see what a professional sommelier, I mean, my sister's husband is a sommelier and he chooses amazing wine. But I was excited to try a different sommelier. And so, I was curious to see how the wine would enhance the food with each course. So I'm looking through the courses and I'm so excited by what I see on the menu. And I actually took a picture. So let me just read you what I actually ate that day. And I will be posting pictures of this on my Instagram. I'm going to need my stronger glasses here. I'm going blind, literally. Okay. So the first course, you could choose between a butternut squash velouté, if that's how you pronounce it, and a fall salad. So I chose the fall salad, which was lettuce greens, shaved Brussels sprouts, cranberries, pear, and an apple cider vinaigrette. Now, that sounded nice. I've had fall salads before. The most delicious fall salads have butternut squash, maybe like a little bit of goat cheese, a little bit of maybe some cranberry, a beautiful, well-seasoned dressing that highlights and brings out all the flavors. This salad had zero flavor. I'm telling you, it was dry lettuce. I don't like a lot of dressing. I like a very light dressing. You couldn't taste a dressing on it. And I could have asked for more, obviously, but I didn't. And it was so boring, and it was pretty. It looked pretty when it was served to me. The pears looked pretty, but the pears didn't have any flavor either. And I'm just like, what is this? Now, the wine was amazing. One of the best white wines I've ever had in my life. So the wine was beautiful. And I will say that the salad tasted a little bit better when I ate it with the wine, but like there was no flavor. So it was very light. So I was like, okay, whatever. It's a light first course. Fine. They served some bread, ate some bread with each bite of salad, which is what I like to do anyway. But I'm like, oh my God, something needs to have some flavor here. Salt and pepper, please. So the second course, you could choose between crispy pork belly and sweet potato gnocchi. Now, we've all had gnocchi. It should melt in your mouth, pillowy, delicious, potato pasta, amazing. This was not that, okay? So, but listen to the description. This is why I got excited. Crispy Brussels sprouts, celeriac granola. Basically celery granola, I think is what that's supposed to be. Fried sage, so that and the sweet potato gnocchi. So the sweet potato gnocchi is obviously the main, the main attraction. And then you've got these crispy Brussels sprouts, the celery type granola, and the fried sage. It all sounds delicious, right? I was so excited to get this dish. So it comes, and again, I'll share this on my Instagram this week. It looks really pretty. It looks like a wreath of, you see a potato gnocchi, you see a Brussels sprout, half a Brussels sprout. The gnocchi, now it was formed into big, kind of like round balls. They were seared. You could see that they were seared. And so there was like a little tiny bit of texture because they were seared, and you could see that they had been cooked in a pan, and they had that kind of like pan mark. But it was a potato ball. I mean, it was just a ball of sweet potato. That's what it tasted like. There was no flavor except just sweet potato. And I love sweet potato, but I'm going to eat sweet potato. Like when I make sweet potatoes at home, I'm either making sweet potato fries and I'm dipping each fry in a little bit of hot sauce, or I'm eating it with a bite of egg that has a bite of the sweet potato and dipped in hot sauce. So there's a lot of flavor and heat and salt. Another way I'll eat sweet potato is I'll bake sweet potatoes, and then I'll eat it with a very well-dressed red wine vinaigrette salad with chicken. And again, the chicken has a lot of seasoning and salt, and the dressing is very vinegary and salty, and there's olive oil, and I need that really salty, oily salad with each bite of the sweet potato and the chicken. All three I eat at once, so that you get that sweet potato, that there's balance for the sweetness of the sweet potato. Like, I don't want to just eat sweet potato by itself. I need some acid. I need some salt. I need some texture. That's how I choose to eat sweet potato, and I enjoy it that way. And sweet potato is very healthy for you. It's full of nutrients. And so again, I'm excited that I'm about to eat this delicious chef prepared meal or dish, entree or not entree, second course that, had these additional elements that should be delicious. But so I'm taking a bite of, so I take the Brussels sprout, picking up a bite of the gnocchi, little piece of the gnocchi, and a little bit of the sage. It's all dry. I mean, all you taste is the sweet potato. And I'm sorry, the texture of a sweet potato with a Brussels sprout, not that great. It's not that great together. And there was no flavor. There was literally no flavor except for sweet potato. It was so dry Brussels sprout, dry sweet potato, or, it was moist, I suppose, the sweet potato, but not a good dish. I ate it all, but I ate it just because my stepfather paid a lot of money for that dish. And I'm just like, this sucks. And I'm like, oh my God, what is the main course going to be like? It better be good. I'm like, this is the most disappointing Thanksgiving meal so far. So then for the main course, you could choose between roasted turkey breast with the fixins, and I'll go over those in a minute, pumpkin risotto, grilled New York strip, or seared salmon. Now, Chad got the New York strip and he ordered it medium rare. It came medium well and had no flavor. The roasted turkey breast, okay, so this is what it comes with. Pomme puree, which was potato puree, like a mashed potato basically, but it was literally a puree. Green beans. There were 3 green beans on the plate. Stuffing. Now, usually my stuffing to turkey ratio is 2 to 3 parts stuffing with 1 part turkey. I need a lot of stuffing. And just as much gravy as the stuffing. I mean, I drench everything in gravy. And then I do enjoy a little tiny bit of a cranberry sauce. And I like the basic bitch canned cranberry sauce and gravy. So looking at it, I'm like, okay, I'll have a really well-balanced, turkey traditional Thanksgiving meal. Girl, I mean, it wasn't terrible, but like the potatoes were puree. The potatoes were like soup almost. And the gravy was fine. They just poured some gravy on the side of the dish. There was not enough stuffing. The turkey, it was like these round turkey. What we had hypothesized is they had taken a turkey breast, somehow chopped additional turkey breast and stuffed it in the middle, because the middle was just this weird texture white meat. And we were all like, they should have maybe chopped up some dark meat and mixed it with a stuffing and put that in the middle. I mean, that would have been delicious. Not this. It was like this weird texture turkey and I ate most of it, but it was not what I wanted. I mean, it was that part was okay. The cranberry sauce, they made an extra fancy cranberry sauce, and I couldn't tell what was in it. They had put some kind of seasoning or something in it. I don't know what it was, or spice, but it threw it off. So I didn't even eat the cranberry sauce with each bite because it was just it just threw off the normal taste that you want from a cranberry sauce on Thanksgiving. The wine pairings continued to be amazing. So the wine pairings with each meal were perfection, really well done. But the food itself, okay, so then the 4th course, again, you could choose between pumpkin cheesecake, molten chocolate cake, or a selection of European cheese. And I chose the pumpkin cheesecake. But what I said, do you mind just putting it in the freezer a little bit so that it's just like, slightly frozen when it comes out to me? Because I like kind of frozen cheesecake. Every time my mom's made cheesecake, if I get it at the Cheesecake Factory, even after I freeze it overnight, it is still creamy, okay? I can still, even in the most frozen state, even if it freezes overnight, I can still slide my fork in and take smooth, creamy, frozen creamy bites. It's like a frozen custard almost. They were like, oh yeah, we can definitely do that for you. Yeah, they won't even have to bring it up to temp. That'll be easy. Well, what I didn't know is that I think these were just like pre-frozen and deep frozen. And they put this, I couldn't even get my fork through it. And it was icy. Terrible, terrible, terrible. It's my own fault for asking it for that way, but it was not creamy. It was icy and terrible. So what a waste of money for my I feel bad that my stepfather spent so much on that meal. But my mom didn't have to cook. It was a beautiful view. The wine was amazing. The company was amazing, of course, because we were with our whole family. So all of that was positive. But the food, no bueno. Sorry, do better. The restaurant is called Ocean. And my sister was like, the food here used to be amazing. I don't know what happened. And you get a new chef and sometimes things go to hell. So anyway, next morning we woke up. They had made us some breakfast sandwiches, which were really nice. We just took a breakfast sandwich and went to Augusta. We saw my friend Mike. We went out for just a quick dinner. I had some fried shrimp. But yeah. So anyway, I really hope that all of you had a much more delicious Thanksgiving meal than I did. But at least it makes a good story, right? So anyway, those were my tasty treats of the week. I hope all of you have had some delicious, tasty treats this week yourselves. All right, let's get into my podcast review. So I'm doing another episode from Burnt Toast, which I love this podcast. I love the host. Her name's Virginia Soul Smith. And she's super smart. She had on a very interesting guest by the name of Debra Benfield, who's a registered dietitian. And she's a registered dietitian with 40 years of experience. I'm just going to read her bio so you get a good idea of her background. So she's had 40 years of experience helping people heal their relationship with food, movement, and their bodies. Her work sits at the intersection of anti-ageism, body liberation, and trauma-informed care, offering a radically compassionate alternative to diet and wellness culture, especially for those in midlife and beyond. After turning 60, Deb began questioning the dominant narratives around aging, vitality, and beauty, and quickly realized the majority of resources still centered weight loss and youthful appearance as the ultimate goals. In response, she created what she couldn't find, a framework for nourishing the body that honors body respect, prioritizes liberation, and embraces the full spectrum of aging. She's the author of a new book called Unapologetic Aging, How to Mend and Nourish Your Relationship with Your Body. So, before I get into this, I'm very interested in topics like this because obviously I am someone that is really interested in longevity, in all these beauty techniques and plastic surgery and red light therapy and anti-aging. I know you're not supposed to say that, but whatever. All these products. I love it. I love it. It's almost, for me, it feels like a game I get to play to try to, self-improvement. And other people feel exhausted by that and feel like it's us trying to cater to society's expectations and the patriarchy. And I think there's different ways to look at it. And I think that I really like her perspective. And I think it's important for these types of conversations to be had so that, like, obviously plastic surgery is becoming more and more normalized, more accessible for the regular person, right? Like, I'm considering getting blepharoplasty soon as I can afford it. And there's other people that don't spend a dime on it, right? We just talked about Linda Hamilton. And my mom is just turned 70. I'm getting her this eye cream, but she doesn't even use eye cream. And she's been contemplating not doing Botox anymore. But she's like, but then I look at myself and I like the results of Botox. And, she's like, I feel so good inside. It's hard to see in the mirror that I don't look the same way I feel inside. And I think a lot of women feel that way, right? Like, you see all these people that are, and I interview a lot of people through the jobs that I do that are in their 50s, in their 60s, in their 70s even, but they still have that youthful spirit. And so I think internally, obviously we grow and we change, but some people are interested in the exterior and trying to look more youthful, and some people don't. And so I found myself reflecting here on reasons that I do care about this. It's helpful for doing some inner work and looking at the reasons that you do these things, or these practices are important in your life. So as I go through this, I'll share different things that went through my mind and things that I thought about. So Deb started the conversation talking about how she started working as a dietitian with people suffering from eating disorders. And when she turned 60, and she was telling the audience that she's now 67, she wanted to do some research about, living with the most amount of vitality as possible, and what that looks like today. So she wanted to research how it's being presented to live with vitality today. And she said what she found was still a lot of the diet culture myths. It was very weight-centric. She said she wanted to develop resources for women that weren't centered around pressure, around weight, and looking young. And I forgot to tell you the title of this episode is You Don't Have to Be a Super Ager. Now, when I read that title, I didn't know what that meant, super ager. And I actually was thinking it was the exact opposite of what it turns out to mean. When I first heard about it, I thought about it as somebody that's very, and again, God rest his soul, but someone like my dad who looked 90 when he was 68 because he didn't take care of himself, and he smoked 2 packs a day, and he had all these heart attacks, and he ate very poorly and didn't move his body, didn't exercise. And he aged way faster than most people do because of the things that he did and the way his lifestyle choices. And I was like, oh, a super ager must be those people that are like really advanced in their biological age, for example. And what I was thinking this would be about is, well, you don't have to like throw everything in and just totally give up and, age way faster than you need to. But that was not what it was about. So we'll get into what that means. Super ager. Have you ever heard of that expression? Now that when I listen to this podcast, I'm like, oh, okay, that makes sense. So we'll get into that in a second. I want to bring it up as we go through this podcast. So anyway, I think that's a very honorable thing to do is, as you're getting into your 60s and 70s, it's like what resources are out there for women that want to live with vitality at that age. And my friend, Dr. Burns, she was my investor, she talked about that. She's like, she's in her 60s and she's living her best life, but she's not trying to it's funny because she's like, she talked about the same thing. She's like, everyone's just trying to do all this Botox and try to look younger. But she's like, I want to talk about how it's not about that. And it's about just living healthy and feeling good and having energy. And meanwhile, Dr. Burns lost a lot of weight on the GLP-1s, and she's talked about having a breast lift and doing some of these plastic surgery things because, she anyway, so I just think it's interesting that she was talking about that, but also talking about how she doesn't want the pressure that society's giving you. Anyway, so Virginia just talks about how she loved the book. She said it's a guide to living well without the diet and wellness mess. She said it's also a powerful reckoning with ageism and fat phobia. and what that prevents us from doing, basically the intersection of ageism and fat phobia. And she said, anything more you want to add to this to help people understand what your book's about? And Deb said she wanted to create awareness that if you're not aware of your own internal ageism, it should help people mend their stories with their bodies that they've carried for years and making peace with changes like being in a larger body. It also gets into intimacy and body liberation as you age, and it's such an important legacy for people to come. Now, when she said that, internal ageism, basically people that have internalized like phobias against aging, when she put it that way, internal ageism, it made me reflect back to when I think it was like, there's all these media presented to us in the media is that women do lose value as they age. And so I think as I got these messages as I was growing up, there was a fear around aging because I'm like, I'm going to lose my importance, my value in the world as I age. At least that was the message that was given me. And I do remember internalizing that and being scared of reaching certain ages because of that. And I think that's probably what's inside me today that also drives me to want to look more youthful. I thought this next point was really interesting. Virginia said, you talk about in the book how people often say, oh, you haven't aged or changed a bit. And that's something to celebrate, right? And you question why people say this. And it's one of those things culturally we do. You're like, like when I see my friends in Boston, I'm like, oh my God, you look the same as we did in college, right? And it's this huge compliment. And so Deb was like, similar how you're not supposed to tell people they look great if they lost weight. She said, it's similar. She's like, in parallel, looking older is bad and younger is always better. She said, if getting older is failing rather than succeeding in life. So it plants all these ideas that looking the same as you did when you were in your 20s, like you're successful. You're being successful rather than failing in life, right? And so Virginia's like, yeah, she's like, why wouldn't we want to look like we've been living? Now, granted, if you've been through a really stressful time, the signs of stress don't look that good, right? But it's a point, right? Like the Linda Hamilton quote, I want to show I've earned my life. Again, there's two ways to look at it. Deb said, I understand that it's internalized fear. To pass as younger gives you more social collateral. And theoretically, you lose relevance in our culture, and it's empowering to say the least. She said it's also a perpetual fight. She said, I'm not interested in fighting my body. She said, what happens when you stop fighting and actually befriend your body is what my book's all about. And it's funny when she said that, she said, I understand that it's internalized fear and that it gives you more social collateral. So it is interesting because when you do think about that, like there's been times where in my head, as I think about these things I want to do, like the blepharoplasty or, my red light therapy and staying more youthful looking, like I think because I grew up, seeing my mom stress about finances and money, I think part of that internalized fear around losing it all, being homeless, not having enough money to support myself and to live. I think part of me is like, if I'm always looking a decade younger, I'll still be able to get that sales job when I'm 70 if I need to work, and if I'm taking good care of myself, I'll be able to still support myself even if I'm single and alone and needing money. I'll be able to get that job because I'll always be able to do sales, and if I'm looking, younger than I am, I'll be able to get that job. I've had that thought. And so when she's posing it in that way, oh, this internalized fear, I'm like, yeah, I have felt that fear of, the loss of what's the relevance in society or the ability to get hired, right? So I do think that some of it stems from that. And Virginia said, I have to confess, she said, when I was reading your book, I became aware of my own internalized ageism. She said, my boyfriend Jack, who I sometimes talk about, is 9 years younger than me. And he was talking about a friend, and he referred to her as an older woman. And I realized the person he was talking about was the same age as me. And I was immediately offended. I was like, oh, why are you using those words, older woman? And he just looked at me and was like, babe, it's a good thing. And she had to check herself. She's like, for him, it was a normal term. It made me realize I needed to reclaim that word, just like the word fat. She's like, I've reclaimed the word fat. She said I needed to reclaim older woman and not get offended by that because it's not offensive. And Deb said, we all do it. She said, it's very ingrained in us, just like our anti-fat bias. Virginia said, I remember we discussed liking the term elder, but there were other words that had more sting. She said, you also write about super agers in the book, which we see on social media. She said it's somebody over 70 or 80 who is still doing yoga or windsurfing or running a marathon at their age, and we tend to celebrate that. She said, you say that it's not straightforward, like it's not a straightforward celebration of aging. She's like, talk more about that. And so this is how I realized what a super ager was. And it's what I repost on Instagram constantly, right? It's the 80-year-old, it's the guy with Parkinson's disease that just finished that marathon. It's that, person that lost his leg in the war that hikes Mount Kilimanjaro, right? It's the fat person that's doing a handstand and powerlifting, right? And so what Deb said is, as I was thinking of this, she's like, I was watching the New York Marathon. She's like, they highlighted people with disabilities or older people or overweight people who had overcome this massive challenge to accomplish this feat of running the marathon. And she's like, and I also have respect for people that work hard to accomplish things. And she's like, and aging is interesting because the longer we live, the more experiences we have, the more diverse our character or state can become with each passing year. So there's just as many ways to age as there are to live your life. She's like, so my point is you don't have to be this, a superhuman role in this world to live a good life. She's like, just because you don't have to be, she's like, you don't have to be a good fatty. She's like, that term you use for people that are overweight or in a large body who are exercising and on a weight loss journey, to live a good life in a larger body, but, they call them good fatties because they're doing what society wants them to do and trying to get into a smaller body. And so it's interesting. I understand what she's saying because it's an interesting point. I mean, I love seeing these stories of people that have made these huge accomplishments, but I also can understand how it can make other people feel less than and bad about themselves if they're seeing these things on social media. And Virginia commented, yeah, like it's not enough just to preserve my mobility as I age, but I need to be able to do a headstand. And Deb said, that's the hard thing. She's like, I do want to celebrate these accomplishments and something about a woman. She's like, I saw something about a woman who was around my age who broke a record for doing a plank. She was actually about 10 years younger than me. But what did I do? She's like, I immediately get on the floor to see how long I can do a plank. She's like, so there's all these things on social media. You see these challenges of stability and balance. It's not a bad thing to focus on some of these things. Balance is important. But we tend to compare ourselves, which can be harmful. So you don't want to walk away feeling doomed. Fear mongering does not help us. She's like, we live longer when we have a more positive mindset. And so Virginia said, I think we also have a very narrow vision of health. Just because you can get off the floor without your hands doesn't mean you're the epitome of health. She said, so it doesn't mean that you're in poor health if you can't do it. She said, I mean, I can't do that every day. She's like, but I recently increased the amount of weight I can do in strength training. So that's, so she's like, I feel good about that. And it's kind of a wash. And Deb said, we're just so influenced by these longevity bros. She said, we're inundated on social media. It really narrows our definition of beauty and living well. She's like, I think in midlife, there needs to be a reflective period. We have less time. And what are my values? What's important to me? How do I want to spend my time? Do I want to spend it, doing all these longevity practices? Or do I want to spend it in a different way? And Virginia said, what you also wrote about in the book is a lot of people say, what I used to do isn't working for me anymore. And it usually refers to how they're eating or moving their body. So I really love the way you reframed this, because you were like, well, was this ever really working for you? And Deb's like, well, that's the point. She's like, what does it mean work for you? She's like, I mean, the focus is working hard to maintain this narrow image of what's okay, what's acceptable, for your body to stay a certain size and shape or functionality, and really holding on to that. So I don't think that serves us, because our bodies are supposed to change. And I understand what they're saying. I mean, there's this woman I can think of on social media, and she's in her 60s, and she holds up these like balloons, like 62, and I don't think she has an ounce of fat on her body. She's in a bikini. She's ripped and shredded to the max. And, you can tell that she, again, probably has no indulgences in life, lives a very, very regimented life, because to her, preserving this youthful look is the most important value to her, right? And she's highlighting it on social media. And not a lot of 60-year-old women are going to look like that, right? And then there's the other side where it's, the granny running, or, the Parkinson's guy that does the marathon. I think those are two very different things. And I think there's a difference in what you celebrate with those two different images that you're seeing on social media. And I understand what Deb's saying. I mean, it's good to be aware of these things, so that when you see these things, I mean, like when I see that, and I'm pretty internally healthy, right? I don't want to look like that in my 60s, because I like eating too much. Like, that's not my value. My value is enjoying food and wine, and, enjoying life that way. I don't need to be wearing a bikini in my 60s. Okay. But I think what she's saying is that there are people on social media that it'll make them feel bad about themselves, like they're less than. And I think that's also where people need to be careful about what they put in their social media content or in their feed. Don't look at things that are going to be harmful to your mental health, obviously. Deb said, to move forward on the monkey bars, you need to let go of that last rung to grab onto the next one. So if you're holding on and you're staying stuck in the past, that's not going to serve you to move forward in your life. She said, but the social conversation is maintaining that phrase frame of you at a certain age. And she's like, it just doesn't make sense to me. And people are spending so much money trying to achieve this. I've done a bunch of episodes on that Brian Johnson guy that's spending millions trying to, get his biological age back to 18. And it's, to him, obviously, that is an important value, right? And then Virginia wanted to talk about this idea of freeze framing in the menopause discourse. And Deb said, the biggest thing I hear about in the menopause conversation is fear about change. It makes you feel like you should be doing what they're selling. So, but the current research is showing that our aging brains have the ability to adapt. She's like, I love celebrating the ways we can continue to live as we age without pressure and fear. And so Virginia said, with this menopause conversation on social media right now and the intersection of diet culture, it seems like everything boils down to two things we're supposed to do right now: eat as much protein as possible and try to strength train constantly in a weighted vest. She's like, can you give your take on these two topics? And Deb said, as most things in this area, there are some truths. She said, I think the most important thing is to honor the unique person and their needs. She said, and also to prioritize mental health. So if you've ever suffered with compulsive thoughts, dieting, anxiety, the fear mongering is going to be very triggering. So obsessing on protein grams can be harmful. She's like, but understanding where protein is in our food is important. Making choices that do incorporate some protein most of the time, not having to eat protein every single meal. But, some people don't like protein that much and it can be more difficult. My favorite example is a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. She's like, I love it. She's like, there's a lot of people that don't highlight the benefits of peanut butter, but peanut butter works for me. It's satisfying. It's got some protein in it. You put it with some jelly. She's like, it's delicious. Another example is charcuterie board. She's like, you might have some cheese and ham and meat. She's like, there's protein and fat and carbs. She's like, but you don't need to necessarily pay attention to the grams, but just know that you're eating something with protein. And I understand what she's saying. I've been on this mission to try to incorporate more protein, trying to get to that 100 grams, because I have been influenced on social media and I do want to maintain muscle mass. So, but it's funny because, the other day I woke up and I didn't feel like making a protein shake in the morning. I did want something sweet. So I made a piece of sourdough toast and I put almond butter and jelly on it. And it was really delicious. And I did feel good that it had some little bit of protein in it, not a lot, but there was some protein. And I'm like, I feel good about this. It's delicious. It's satisfying. And I'm not sitting here being like, oh, this didn't have 20 grams of protein, right? I think her message is to the people that are force feeding themselves eggs and cottage cheese and hating it and being like, oh, I have to do this to get my protein grams in, and torturing themselves, And Virginia talked about how she's like, there was a time when my child lived solely on Uncrustables. She's like, great, easy breezy. I actually had to look up what an Uncrustable was. And it was funny because I was reading about how athletes eat Uncrustables because it's a really quick source of carbs, protein, fat. And while they're ultra processed, they do have some nutritional value, right? With the peanut butter. So that's her point. Virginia's like, I'm easy breezy. I'm not going to talk to my child about, oh, that's not the best choice. She's like, it's easy. It was fine. Now, again, there's a lot of parents out there probably that would never in the world give their child an Uncrustable. So again, it's different strokes for different folks. But Deb said, the thing I'll say about strength training is no matter what you do, you're going to lose muscle mass. Your body naturally softens. And I think that's something that's inviting. I love that my body is softening. I used to be long and lean. So my nickname was Olive Oil, so I embrace it. And I kind of laugh when I see people walking around in their weighted vests trying to fight against nature. Virginia's like, I'm carrying around my own weighted vest just in my own body. She's like, and she's like, but listeners, if you love your weighted vest, look, we're not taking it away. And Deb's like, I'm not judging. She said, I know people are just trying to better themselves. And certainly we all need to be able to carry around and lift our own body weight. She's like, but if you can do more than that and it's accessible to you, wonderful. She's like, so many women contact me and say, I just can't do heavy lifting. And that's okay. And I agree with that. I gave myself that. I had been trying to lift heavier and it just injured my body. And for me, it's just, a good 15, 20 pounds. I'm good with a lower weight, higher rep. That's just what works for me. Making yourself do something you hate is not how you should spend your time at this precious age. So maybe I'll get to the place where I want you to there's more empowerment, and you can feel strong and powerful. Like, I understand that some people power lift and love the way they feel when they're lifting those heavier weights. But for me, she's like, I'm more of a yogi. She's like, I love yoga. I'm able to hold my own body weight. And she's like, that's what works for me. And Virginia said, I actually really enjoy strength training. She said, but I hate cardio. She said, if they were pushing that more, she said, I would just be a mess. And Deb said, if you also find community and socialize more, that's also helpful. Community socializing is very good for longevity. She said, but yeah, I want people to be able to keep moving, but not in a way that disconnects you from you. She's like, if you start counting grams or judging your body to make sure you're doing it right, she's like, in my mind, that's not a healthy way to do things. Diet culture has taught us to skip meals, ignore hunger. People need to nourish themselves. Now they're talking about microdosing GLP-1s through the menopausal changes in your body. She's like, I'm not going to make an overarching judgment because these GLP-1s have been life-changing for some people. But people do need to make choices based on what they want versus what society expects. And again, I think to kind of summarize, I think that these are really good messages. I love that she's putting these out there and I think a lot of these podcasters like Virginia Soul-Smith, who they're more like the body neutral, anti-fat bias. It's very much about accepting yourself, right? Accepting where you're at and doing what's right for you, not putting so much pressure on yourself. And I think everybody does have to do what's right for them. I think helping to educate the public, I think, can be a positive thing because not everyone knows what foods incorporate protein and not everyone knows what is proper nutrition for themselves. And I think what she was saying, it is important to be able to support your own body weight. I think that is a good message because you get injured if you can't support your own body weight. Your bones are heavy. If your muscles can't support your bones, you get pinched nerves, you get injuries. So, but I do also think that I know I have internalized ageism and fat phobia, right? I think that that's something that I like to analyze on this podcast because I do recognize it. I see it. It doesn't stop me from enjoying focusing on longevity. So, but I think some of the points she made about internalized fear, wanting that social collateral. I mean, I've talked about before, do I want to lose the privileges that I have in society? No, nobody does, obviously. And Virginia's talked about how she's like, I get it. I get why people want to try to stay in a smaller body. It's hard to move through this world in a larger body as a fat person. So she gets it, but she's no longer fighting her own body to try to stay in a thinner body. She's practiced that self-acceptance. And I'm someone that does want to stay where I am. I think that's where I'm comfortable. I'm sure there's society elements to that for sure. It's also, again, and I've talked about it before, that when I start to put on weight, I can really feel it shaking on my body, putting more stress on my knees. Like when I've gained 20 pounds, it doesn't feel good to me, good to my body, even though I'm still in a socially acceptable body. To me, knowing myself, knowing where I'm comfortable and feel my best. Anyway, I just thought it was an interesting conversation. If you have any thoughts about this, about your own internalized ageism, like what is your feeling on that? What is your thought on that? Do you have internalized ageism? Do you try to fight it? Do you think it's not internalized ageism? Do you think that this is just how women can continue to look like themselves, look their best as they age? I don't know. I think it's an interesting conversation and worth having. So if you'd like to share any podcasts with me, like the one my listener, and that's the thing, is like that podcast that my listener sent, that whole episode is all about fighting the signs of aging, right? From a woman who's married to a board certified dermatologist, right? So obviously she is very focused on that stuff. And I would imagine that my listener does some of this stuff. And so I'd be curious, the rest of you, right? Do you think you have internalized ageism, and where does that come from? What do you think it's from the media, from the way media has presented women as we age, losing value in our society? I don't know. I think it's interesting to think about. Anyway, that is the show. I hope it wasn't too much torture listening to my voice like this. You probably missed some of the words I was trying to say, but hopefully it came through okay. I've got another great episode next week. If you want to listen, the next week is going to be a Craving More. So that's going to be one of the subscriber only episodes. So if you want to listen to that, you can go to the link in my bio on Instagram at the Diet Obsessed Podcast, and you can subscribe through that link. You can also subscribe through Apple Podcasts or really wherever you listen to podcasts. If you're on YouTube and watching this on YouTube, please click that subscribe button. And until we meet again, I hope all of you have a very balanced week.